For this project, you will need a Roland TR-505 or 626 drum machine, a soldering iron, a large Phillips screwdriver, small Phillips screwdriver, tweezers, and the Hive Mind TR-505 TR-626 Backlight Kit, which contains the backlight assembly and 2 new elastomer strips. If you are working with the TR-626, you'll also need 2 short lengths of wire, maybe about 8 inches each. So don't forget those. I'll probably put a little text on the screen right there. So the first thing you'll want to do is remove the 2 knobs from the front. Set those aside and don't lose them. Flip the drum machine over. I like to remove the battery door just so that I don't lose it. And remove the 3 screws securing the housing. You'll do this using the large Phillips screwdriver. And once again, and I can't stress this enough, once you have those screws out, set them aside where you won't lose them. We're going to use a little glass container for this. Once those 3 screws are out, you can lift that back assembly off and open this up. Now, for the majority of this project, we're going to be working with this assembly board. So you're going to use your small screwdriver to remove this. Remove the cables first. And remove these 5 screws. These screws not only hold this board in place, but they actually hold the LCD screen against the LCD controller assembly along those elastomer connectors. Did I say 5? I meant 6 screws. That one was hiding. All right, so you can lift off this board, which is probably going to bring the whole LCD assembly along with it. And you can see this one is really dark. I'm not really sure what does it. I think it might be light exposure, judging from how it works its way around from the edge. Maybe it's a UV thing. Either way, this one's not going to look like this when we're done with it. You can peel this off. It might be a little stuck, but there's not actually any adhesive there. It's just pressure holding it on. And you can set these aside. They just peel right off. We have replacements in the kit. Now this is the part that's kind of difficult and the part where you have to be most careful. It's removing this backing sticker from the LCD, because that's what's actually dark there, is this sticker, or more accurately, the adhesive holding that sticker into place. So I just like to lay it down on something kind of soft so that it doesn't scratch. And you should be able to pull a little bit up with a fingernail. We're probably going to fast forward this bit because this is the most tedious part. But what you really want to do is make sure you only pull that back sticker off. And that's why I suggest using a fingernail. Okay, perfect. So as I start pulling that up, hopefully this close-up works here. You should see, that there is still a layer attached to the circuit board there. That's the layer that's the actual LCD itself and not the reflective backing. So as I pull this off, you're going to see a lot of adhesive around the edges. and there will be like a sort of a vinegar smell. Not entirely unpleasant, but it smells like if you've ever worked with like photo paper in a photo lab or film developing, it's that sort of smell. And there's going to be a little bit of adhesive stuck on there. That adhesive, really the easiest way to get it off is to just rub it with your finger. Or if you have an adhesive eraser or a rubber eraser, you can use that to rub this off as well. This will probably be a part of the video where we fast forward. Maybe play some hold music. You can see that adhesive just kind of rolls off. So most of it is off there. I'm just going to use an alcohol wipe to get as much more off of it as I can. You don't have to have these alcohol wipes. I don't list them in the BOM, but they are helpful. Process is same here with the 626. It's just a different screen panel. There's a slight difference in the display itself. Almost there. And just a little bit more in the middle, I can see. All right, so there we have it. It is clear, except for a little bit more adhesive around the edges that I'm going to take off. But this is how your screen should look. You shouldn't lose any of the LCD backing. And if you get the light through it at an angle, you can see the actual image that can appear. You might not see it, but this is what it should look like. We're going to move on to the next step now, which is the installation of the panel itself. Assembly. The first thing you're going to want to do is take your clean screen. Make sure you have it oriented the right way. So you want the scale, pattern, and step text on the upper right here and as a mirror image. And lay it down right here inside of that housing. Next thing you'll want to do is take these elastomer strips and slide one in here on the top, one in here on the bottom, making sure that it covers the whole of the LCD assembly, edge to edge. Next thing you'll want to grab is the backlight itself. So that's here, and you'll see wires coming out here on the right side as you lay it in. You want the black wire on top. That's how you make sure you have the appropriate orientation. Now this is a very tight fit by design. You want to have both wires coming out that end around that screw, and then you'll want to sort of bend the body of the 505 and snap it into place. Again, super tight fit. If you find that it isn't sitting properly, Double check around the wires. That's usually where it sticks a little bit. Once that's in place, you're going to take your board for the assembly, lay that on top, and yeah, you'll definitely see a bit more of a gap than you're used to, but all these holes help to keep everything aligned. So you just want to put that back together, one screw at a time, working from opposite ends. So I'll put that screw in and just screw it in a little bit so that you know it's catching. Do the same thing with the opposite side. Just screw it in slightly so that you know it's catching. And then do the same with the other 4 screws along the top and bottom, working from opposite ends, the way you would like if you were tuning a snare drum. That's not one of them. The last one is there. There we go. Now, once all 6 screws are in place, you can start to tighten them up a little bit, making sure to keep everything even tension-wise. As you work. And what this is doing is it's holding the assembly in place, but it's also making sure these elastomer strips, these are the original ones, have enough connection. The new ones are a little bit taller this way so that you can see, you know, you can fit the LCD backlight in there. The way these work is it's a bunch of little tiny rods inside that go from the top to the bottom, and they're all flexible and they're all conductive. So this will lay in and the board will lay on top, and it'll just make all of the connections right in a line from one end to the other. Now that this is reconnected, we'll reconnect this switch here and slide it over. At this point, you're going to want to start heating up your soldering iron if you haven't heated it up already. We'll need to remove the bottom board assembly. Just a couple of screws. One here. And one here. And then that whole bottom board assembly pops right out. What you'll want to do, slide that over a little bit. Flip this over completely. And actually, to make things simpler, you can disconnect the battery here. Flip that whole thing over, and then grab your red and black leads from the other side. And now what we're going to do is we're going to get in close, and we're going to solder those leads directly to the power input. This is one thing that's going to be different on the 626. We're going to get to that in a follow-up here at the end of the video, showing where these connections are on the 626. So these are the connections for the 505. Just get a little zoom in on that board for you. Make this a little bit easier. And we're just going to solder to these 2 points here and here, which get power to the light only when the power switch is on. Could do the red first. Let's grab my solder here. Doesn't take much solder. Technically, you could even do it with the solder that's already on the board. So that could be a bit of a pain in the butt, so I don't recommend it. Just get a little bit of solder on here. A little bit of solder on here. Black will go to your left. and red will go to your right. Just like that. Then, once those are connected, you can flip that back around. You can reconnect the battery. I like to just run, oh, okay, see these are tangled. Make sure you run these under, that way. Give you a little bit more movement there. And then you want to take those two screws and get that bottom board back into position. There we go. Get that lined up. This is also a great time to do any circuit bending you might want to do. It's a great time to replace the battery, because these batteries have a tendency to go bad over time. We'll get these two screws into place. And then, carefully, flip the top back over and put in those last three screws. Flip it over. You should be able to see that the screen already looks so much clearer than when we started. None of that darkness, just a perfectly crystal clear screen. Put these back on. And now, for the part everyone's been waiting for, we'll plug in the power. Hold this up so you can get a good look at the light, and ta-da, there we have it. Yeah, that's a better viewing angle. Backlit, clear, and ready to use. Now let's talk about the slight difference on the 626. The first thing you'll want to do is disconnect the whole back panel. And just set that aside where you won't lose it. And then we'll want to remove this main panel. You can do that by removing all of the panels on the way to it. Of course, being sure to set your screws aside where you will not lose them. In order to get this off here, you can either peel this shielding away or desolder each of these points. I go for the desoldering route myself because I want to preserve it. I want to be able to solder it right back into place when I reassemble. Lastly, can't forget that one in the corner. Here we have our main board. Which we can then disconnect. It's kind of tough to see. There we go. There are cable connectors right down in here. So we'll pull those out. And we'll set this assembly aside where we won't lose it. Remove these last couple screws from this shielding. And we're finally there. Finally under the assembly board. Use our small screwdriver for this. And as with the 505, when we remove this assembly, it's all going to come out stuck together. Just peel that apart. Peel the old strips off. And we won't go through the full cleanup of this in this video. Go back to the 505 earlier if you want to see exactly how to clean this up. We're going to pick up in just a moment with this already being cleaned up and reconditioned. Once your screen's been cleaned up and you've gotten as much of the adhesive off of it as you can, go ahead and drop that back right in to the slot where you found it, making sure that the step pattern and scale text is on the upper right as you have it oriented now. You then want to hop into your kit bag, grab the 2 elastomer connectors, drop those in on the top and on the bottom, and then grab your backlight assembly, black wire on top, and then just squeeze that in there. If it's a little too tight of a fit or it seems a little too tight, just flex it back a little bit and it should pop right into place. There you have it. Now, once that's in, you can go ahead and take your backing of the assembly and start putting that in. Now, just like with let's say you were tuning a drum, you'll want to work from opposite sides. So start with this here, and as soon as you have a little bit of catch, hop over to the other side. And then the top and bottom, working on diagonals. You just want to get that screw in enough so that it catches and everything's held in place. And once everything has been held in place, at that point you can tighten everything down evenly. And you can grab these cables right here. Now, one thing that's different between the 505 and the 626 is the length of these leads that you need. The kits are built for a 505 since it's an infinitely more common machine. So what we're going to need to do is add to these, make them longer for the 626. Now, extending those wires is going to be a fairly simple process. We're going to do it in the most analog way possible and just solder more wire onto these wires. You might want to strip a little bit more off of the ends, depending on what kind of wire you're working with. You can work with just about any gauge of hookup wire here. You can work with electrical tape, or you can work with shrink tubing. It really doesn't matter. I'll be using electrical tape for today's demo, but you just link together and then hit it with a tiny bit of solder. Make sure that connection holds. And then I'll do the same thing, red to red. And really, you just want to have a wire that can just about extend you from end to end. Your hookups are going to be all the way up here, so you're going to need a little bit of wire to get there. Strip off a little extra here, link them together, loop over loop. And solder here. And now that all that is linked up, I'm just going to add a little piece of electrical tape to keep those connections covered. Then I'll throw this whole shebang off to the right of the machine and get ready for some fast forwarding as we reassemble. The bottom board, reconnect all of this, and well, you'll see the point that we take it back to before we start soldering anything else. Once you've reassembled the bulk of the machine, but haven't soldered these points down yet, you're ready to move on to the final step here before reassembly. All of your soldering is going to take place in this corner. So go ahead and pull those extended leads over, get them into this area, and fold this back. We're going to solder to 2 points here. The first will be any of these 4 outside points. That's where you'll attach the black. And then for the red wire, you want either of these 2 interior points. You want to make sure you don't bridge over to any of the others. Otherwise, it'll eliminate your ability to turn this machine off again. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and resolder all these other points around the board and reassemble. And now, lastly, for the part everyone's been waiting for, let's see how good that new display looks. There's a little bit of a glare and a little bit more adhesive that I could remove, but still, there you get the effect. Beautiful, legible, gorgeous backlit display. And suddenly, the 626 is a usable drum machine again. If you have any questions or any issues at all while working on this install, stop what you're doing and message me through the killerbeerelayteam.com or the kbrt.com, or hop onto the Discord. I'm more than happy to help you. I want to make sure everybody can use their drum machines.